For over 48 hours now, CNN-IBN has been relentlessly pursuing the story, which has now taken center stage, not just across national, but also international media. And tonight, as we continue our pursuit to dig deeper into the world of Islamabad's lies, we're gathering more and more evidence, more and more voices that are backing our report. There is little doubt left now that the Pakistani establishment knew of Osama's whereabouts. They knew of the American operation that eliminated him. But here's what is unbelievable. It's unbelievable the way that few in Pakistan, like former Interior Minister Rahman Malik, have clinged on to their sham defense. Tonight, for the first time in history, CNN-IBN is getting you a high-ranking minister in the then Pakistan government. This is a CNN-IBN global exclusive.
Tuesday, 8 p.m. as CNN-IBN exposed Pakistan, all eyes were on this man's revelations. Former Defense Minister of Pakistan, Chaudhry Ahmed Mukhtar, who blew the lid of Islamabad's blatant lies.
President Zardari, you are saying, had information about it. You are saying that the then Army Chief, General Ashfaq Kayani, had information about it. And there were people in both the civilian as well as military chain of command who had prior information about Osama.
Yes.
It was for the first time that an insider not just revealed but also accepted the bitter truth about Pakistan establishment, prompting the world to ask if Islamabad was indeed shielding the world's most dreaded terrorist, Osama bin Laden.
The people in the Pakistan Army as well as the other forces, they also knew it, and they were on the lookout for somebody of the stature of Osama bin Laden.
Minutes after the aired that tell-all interview, social media was abuzz. The report sent shockwaves not just in the subcontinent but across the world. And if this proof wasn't enough, 24 hours later, we got a reiteration from none other than a close aide of the former Pakistan President, Asif Ali Zardari.
I'm sure he's the last person who would know much more than anybody else in Pakistan about Osama or the military establishment knowledge of it.
He is certain to know.
Yes, if he said he knew it, then he must have known. He must have known that the military knew, the military establishment knew, and all the defense institutions knew about it. I'm sure he must have known what the ISI or the army knew, or General Kiani or General Shirza Pasha knew about it.
But there were a few in Pakistan who once again chose to do what they are best at, turn a blind eye to the undeniable evidence. Like former Interior Minister of Pakistan, Rahman Malik, who went on to question us on social media. But when we approached him to speak to us on record, all we got was a denial. Today morning, as Rahman Malik and skeptics like him in Pakistan were running for cover, another confirmation of the CNN-IBN report comes from top investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, who's among the few to have raised questions about a secret US-Pak deal before the Navy seals up in Abbottabad.
Pakistan is very sophisticated in its defenses. They have the Air Force is involved in overflights, with constant monitoring. There are planes in the air a lot of times on the border areas to make sure of no intrusions. So you have the defense officials involved. You have the anti-missile defense people involved. You've got a whole series of commands that had to know an awful lot. So the extent of knowledge, when the defense minister said the knowledge went beyond a few people, I think it's the languages. He said there were people. Yeah, I think he knows what he's talking about.
Exposed by one of their own, Pakistan today has little to offer as its defense, as its tactics and lies stand exposed. For how long can Islamabad now continue to feign ignorance? Bureau Report, CNN-IBN.
Now, we don't know the full story of Osama bin Laden's killing. That story is a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, pieces of which are slowly but surely unraveling. One such big piece of that puzzle was exposed last year by award-winning American journalist Seymour Hersh. I had the chance to speak with Mr. Hersh earlier today. Listen in to a short chunk from that interview. Thank you for speaking with us here on CNN-IBN and taking time out. First of all, have you heard the tape? Have you heard what Chaudhry Mukhtar has told us? And what do you make of it?
I have not heard it, but I've certainly read the transcript twice, yes. What I make of it is that you have to understand that the Pakistani radar system was very sophisticated. It was built with American aid, an enormous amount of American aid, after the ISI, the Pakistani Intelligence Service, and the Pakistani military began helping us with the war, the proxy war against Russia that we were running in Afghanistan beginning in 1979, 1980 on, using, if you remember, obviously that's how we got connected with bin Laden and other jihadist groups. Americans are actually using them to fight the Russians. We decided to help Pakistan build a very sophisticated radar system. As I said, I've since learned it was probably what we call a 3D, 3D obviously, auditable radar system. Auditable means that you can't erase an image, which then means that the problem you had if the Americans are coming in advance, as was said by the defense official, defense minister, and I think that's accurate, everybody knew it, it seems clear to me, and I haven't reported this and I haven't done all the work, but I'll give you what I think is a logical assumption. The radar system was shut down for some time, in fact. Otherwise you'd have images you didn't want, which is really tricky. So you're really talking about a real security gap, and a lot of people inside Pakistan very angry. And it took a long time for somebody to speak out. I thought they would very early.
So I just want to be clear. So you're saying that these radar systems were turned off deliberately and that people in the chain of command had to know about it. And the reason they were turned off was that these auditable 3D radars would have then left a trail. Is that right?
What I'm saying is since I've written that story, I've been told something that made enormous sense to me. That I do know that we built a very sophisticated radar system for Pakistan. I think it's all online. If somebody, it's amazing to me more American journalists didn't take a look at it. I think I added up to over $900 million being spent with various companies, all public information because these contracts were let publicly, the construction radar. And I've been told after I wrote my story, I was told that the system was a very sophisticated, auditable, 3D auditable system. And it would have had to be, I'm saying it's worth investigating and worth asking about whether or not the system actually was turned off for a few hours to accommodate the United States. It would be worth asking about, it seems to me. I'm not saying that I know anything empirically. I'm just saying that it's of much interest to me that there's, I think, a lot more reporting to be done on this. But Pakistan is very sophisticated in its defenses. They have the Air Force is involved in overflights, so it's constant monitoring. There are planes in the air a lot of times on the border areas to make sure of no intrusion. So you have the defense officials involved. You have the anti-missile defense people involved. You've got a whole series of commands that had to know an awful lot. So the extent of knowledge, when the defense minister said the knowledge went beyond a few people, I think it's the language is he said there were people. I think he knows what he's talking about. More people, I think. A lot of people in the bureaucracy knew this.
So in a sense, it corroborates your story. What Mukhtar is telling us now corroborates your story. He's basically saying that he knew as defense minister, Zardari knew, and Kayani knew.
And then you have other people. You know, there's other people. There was there were some significant job shifts. And that if you look at this, I will tell you, if you look at the record, there were significant job shifts. And some people were reassigned within a few months to other jobs. And those are the ones who protested about what happened.
All right, that's the award-winning American journalist Seymour Hersh, who was speaking with me a short while ago. That brings us to our big question and our talking point tonight. We've presented over the last 3 nights 3 different pieces of evidence, and yet Pakistan continues to be in denial. What we are interested in tonight, though, is how does this story move forward? Because next week, in exactly 7 days, Nawaz Sharif will meet with President Obama at the White House. Obviously, this will be a certainty in that conversation, not least because CNN-IBN has exposed the story. There are other pieces of the puzzle that are falling into place as well. We will share that information with you through the course of this discussion. But here in our studios, joining us is, as always, G Parthasarthy, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. General Ved Malik, former Chief of Army Staff, is joining us from Chandigarh, and we'll also be joined in a moment by Air Vice Marshal Abid Rao from Pakistan. But let me start with you, Ambassador Parthasarthy. From whatever Seymour Hersh has said, and we have sort of calibrated it, on day 1, it was Chaudhry Mukhtar. On day 2, we presented Wajid Shamsul Hassan, who's corroborated everything that Mukhtar said. And now Seymour Hersh is also endorsing the same story. So we're saying, this is what we have done so far. Let the world judge.
Look, in all these things, it takes time for the truth to come out. For example, in Kargil, there was total denial by the Pakistan military till officers of the Pakistan Air Force started writing on what a crazy thing it was, because they are in the know. In an operation like this, let's remember a couple of things. Bin Laden came in from the tribal areas, was taken to a place called Haripur near Islamabad. He had a baby there in the Haripur government hospital with his youngest wife. He had 4 of them when he was in Pakistan. All this must have been known to dozens.
Okay.
Then he stays in a house which is 800 meters away from Kakul, the military academy, which is the most highly guarded places in the world. So a large number of people would have known. Then there was the whole question of his travel, his security, and so on and so forth. So these things, obviously Kayani was ISI DG for a long time and then became Army Chief. So this would have been hidden from a lot of people as long as he was there. But as time moves on, you're going to get more. It's like they said we had nothing to do with Kargil, they were Mujahideen, it happened. This is going to get more because the evidence is too great. I mean, and now people from the civilian side have come out from the government with the clear report that their president was in the picture. So more people will spill the beans. And with regard to Nawaz going to America, my own view is that, yes, the talk is going to be Afghanistan because the Americans are very, very angry about Kunduz.
In fact, not just that, just now, just before I came into the show, President Obama has held a press conference where he has said that given the precarious situation in Afghanistan, they are leaving 5,000 US troops, residual troops, 5,000 more there, which of course is completely against what he's been promising for a long time.
I think with Pakistan, I mean, much as they would talk Kashmir, Obama will listen to it through one ear and leave it out through the other. The focus is going to be because the Americans are furious that this Taliban attacks have been carried out by, though they are in northern Afghanistan, were carried out by people trained in Pakistan, armed in Pakistan. And President Ashraf Ghani, who's been a very reasonable person, is livid.
With the Pakistanis.
So I think this, what has come in, is only going to fit into a larger perspective of what the Americans would present.
General Malik, I mean, again, this is a point that Ambassador Parthasarthy raised here tonight, as well as we've been hearing from multiple voices over the last 3 nights of our coverage, and that is everybody had reasonable suspicions that people in the military knew, that the DGISI knew, that the Army Chief there knew. But the fact that the civilians knew, the Defense Minister admitting here on CNN-IBN that he knew, and that President Zardari knew, what possible reason do you reckon could have been there if this information is accurate? Why was this information possibly even shared with the civilians? One hypothesis is, if anything went wrong with the operation, then the civilian guys become the fall guys.
You know, your revelation, for which I must compliment you and your channel, has brought out 3 points. First is Pakistani knowing fully well about Osama's shelter, which they had provided in Abbottabad cantonment. And second aspect is the Pakistani propensity of telling lies or of indulging in disinformation, which just now Partha has also mentioned he's mentioned Kargil war, but I can cite many other examples also. And the third aspect which is coming out is the Pakistan-US collaboration in the SEAL operation, Navy SEAL operation, which is still suspected. I think that is another aspect. And the last question that you have raised about Nawaz Sharif's visit to USA, I have no doubt that they are not going to talk about this issue, this revelation of yours. They are probably going to concentrate more on Afghanistan. And Kunduz has always been a major point between Pakistan and Afghanistan, because I recall when Kunduz was evacuated, the Americans had given permission to Pakistan to pull out all their ISI men, and Partha will probably confirm that. Now I come back to the first point. You know, I have no doubt that, there is no doubt that the Pakistani army brass knew about it, and I have a feeling that the Pakistan Defense Minister would have come to know because after all he is Minister of the Defense. Even if the army doesn't inform them exactly or brief them in detail, they do get to know these things. This has been happening earlier also during Kargil war, although Nawaz Sharif keeps on denying that he knew anything about the operation.
Okay.
But there is no doubt that he was given some information by the Pakistan army. So that is an aspect that I have a feeling that what the Pakistani Defense Minister is speaking, he knew about it.
He knew about what was happening.
The second aspect, as far as...
I want to add to what General Malik said, since I was in Islamabad.
Second part...
Nawaz Sharif was briefed in the ops room, but he is a man with a short memory, and certainly the army did not brief him in the operational details, but they did brief him, and he was briefed by the Force Commander Northern Areas that they were climbing the hilltop. So here, in passing, they would be kept informed.
Let's bring in our guest from Pakistan, Air Vice Marshal Abid Rao. Air Vice Marshal, I mean, we've been speaking about this story. You know, on day one, it was Chaudhry Mukhtar's revelation. On day two, Wajid Shamsul Hassan, who was Pakistan's High Commissioner in London at that time, corroborating everything that Chaudhry Mukhtar said. And tonight, we've played out the interview with Seymour Hersh, who's also endorsed our coverage. But in spite of all of these three pieces of evidence, which are making this jigsaw puzzle much more clearer, here's what the New York Times has put out. This is by Jonathan Mahler, who's their media correspondent, and this article is titled, "What Do We Really Know About Osama bin Laden's Death?" This is the New York Times today. It's a 21-page long read. It gives a detailed account of the inconsistencies in the narrative that we know of Osama bin Laden's death. It's a fantastic weekend read in case you want to check it out. It's on the New York Times. It's called "What Do We Really Know About Osama bin Laden's Death?" I mean, it can't just be coincidental. Suddenly all of these narratives, these stories are coming out questioning what we've known for the last 4.5 years.
Are you asking me
Yes.
or somebody else?
No, I'm asking you, Air Vice Marshal.
Okay. I've been hearing since morning on my own national channels that the interview has been cut and pasted and, editing has been done in such a way that it conveys a wrong impression. Second thing, I've heard that the Defense Minister, Ahmed Mukhtar, suffers from loss of memory. Third, I told you yesterday that in Pakistan, the Defense Minister knows nothing about the operational plans of the three services. It is unlike many countries. He controls PIA, Civil Aviation Authority of Pakistan, Survey of Pakistan, and ASF, the Airport Security Force. So it has been traditionally something like this. All service chiefs have maintained their operational plans and they merge at joint staff level. So what Mr. Mukhtar has said, even his own party has denied that he is talking sense. And there is no point now to raise a point, the incident of Osama bin Laden being found here. Second thing, I, raised one question, not with any negative, connotation, that the people who were concerned with Osama bin Laden outside Pakistan, like America or the Western countries, they know exactly who knew and who did not know and how did the operation go. So there was that, undeclared understanding, or otherwise Pakistan Air Force should have shot down that helicopter that came in and, at night. The Air Force was on air defense alert, the radars were on. And so there are these questions for even a common man in Pakistan.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to respond to you step by step. The first thing that you said again, the edited interview and so on. I'm saying this again. I don't know how many times I've said this in the last 3 nights. That we stand by that story. There was no sort of chipping and chopping done with that. Number one, let me finish. I heard you out. Without interrupting you. So hear me out. So there's no editing to that interview. Number one. Number two. I don't know why Rahman Malik is taking up cudgels on behalf of Chaudhry Mukhtar. Number three, our information is that Chaudhry Mukhtar has already left Pakistan. So I think we stand by that story. We are 100%, in fact, to use the words of General Musharraf, we are 500% sure of our story. But leave that as it may. Okay, what about Wajid Shamsul Hassan corroborating everything that Chaudhry Mukhtar said. And he, by the way, was the Pakistan High Commissioner to UK at that time. And you know better than me how close he is to Zardari and how close he was to Benazir. So he knows the inside out of the PPP and the top leadership of the PPP, number one. Number two, we've got Seymour Hersh, the American investigative journalist, on record endorsed CNN-IBN's story. He's saying, and in fact, he's gone one step further. The radar question that you asked about, Air Vice Marshal, he has an answer to that. I'll try and get my producer to play that out for you. So you've got Seymour Hersh, number two. And now, like I showed, the New York Times story, the headline of which says, what do we really know about Osama bin Laden's death? So forget about CNN-IBN for a moment. There's a whole lot of people out there who are questioning the narrative of this story.
May I add, Marshal, I was a High Commissioner during Kargil. You know, the first person who revealed what a fiasco it was an Air Force officer of the Pakistan Air Force. You know that as well as I do. The Air Force generally is more open about these things that I found in Pakistan. Air Marshal Noor Khan perhaps wrote the best book on the 65 conflict. But what I'm saying is that politicians are taken into account, kept in the picture obliquely. Let me say that I know for a fact that Nawaz was briefed in Rawalpindi in the GHQ ops room about the broad contours, but not the details of Kargil.
Sure.
So broad contours, I think the civilian leadership, it's quite possible Chaudhry Mukhtar got it from Zardari. I don't know. Well, I just can't say. I can say.
Well,
last thing is, this channel is an affiliate of CNN, of the CNN. If it cooks up news, it will lose that affiliation. I don't think they're prepared.
We're not in the business of cooking up news, and you would know that better than anybody else, Mr. Parthasarthy. But, you know, Air Vice Marshal, I'll give you more than enough ample opportunity to defend your position. But since you raised the question about the air radars, let's try and play out that operational bit with Seymour Hersh, where he has the thesis on what happened to the radars. It's a very interesting thesis. Listen into that, and I'll go back to the Air Vice Marshal.
Pakistan is very sophisticated in its defenses. They have the Air Force is involved in overflights with constant monitoring. There are planes in the air a lot of times on the border areas to make sure of no intrusion. So you have the defense officials involved. You have the anti-missile defense people involved. You've got a whole series of commands that had to know an awful lot. So the extent of knowledge, when the defense minister said the knowledge went beyond a few people, I think it's the language is he said there were people. Yeah, I think he knows what he's talking about. More people, I think. A lot of people in the bureaucracy knew this.
So in a sense, it corroborates your story. What Mukhtar is telling us now corroborates your story. He's basically saying that he knew as defense minister, Zardari knew, and Kayani knew.
And then you have other people. You know, there's other people. There was there were some significant job shifts. And that if you look at this, I will tell you, if you look at the record, there was significant...
Speaking with us here on CNN-IBN and taking time out, first of all, have you heard the tape? Have you heard what Chaudhry Mukhtar has told us? And what do you make of it?
I have not heard it, but I've certainly read the transcript twice, yes. What I make of it is that you have to understand that the Pakistani radar system was very sophisticated. It was built with American aid, an enormous amount of American aid. Yeah, after the ISI, the Pakistani Intelligence Service, and the Pakistani military began helping us with the proxy war against Russia that we were running in Afghanistan, beginning in 1979, 1980 on, using, if you remember, obviously that's how we got connected with Bin Laden and other jihadist groups. Americans were actually using them to fight the Russians. We decided to help Pakistan build a very sophisticated radar system. As I said, I've since learned it was probably what we call a 3D, 3D obviously, auditable radar system. Auditable means that you can't erase an image, which then means that the problem you had if the Americans are coming in advance, as was said by the defense official, defense minister, and I think that's accurate, everybody knew it, it seems clear to me. And I haven't reported this, and I haven't done all the work, but I'll give you what I think is a logical assumption. The radar system was shut down for some time in Pakistan. Otherwise, you'd have images you didn't want, which is really tricky. So you're really talking about a real security gap, and a lot of people inside Pakistan very angry. And it took a long time for somebody to speak out. I thought they would very early.
So I just want to I don't know if you got a chance to hear that entirely. What he's essentially saying is that Pakistan has very sophisticated, auditable 3D radar systems. So any object that flies into Pakistani airspace, automatically a 3D image of that gets captured. And the only way they could have circumvented that is by switching off those radars. And obviously the Americans couldn't have switched those radars off. It's only the Pakistani commanders who could have switched that radar off, and that's what happened. That is Harsh's thesis.
Well, I cannot comment on what Mr. Harsh is saying, because we were briefed by our Chief of Air Staff then, and that does not at all corroborate. Well, I mean, maybe Ahmad Mukhtar knew about it, but the service chief, at least the Air Force chief, did not know about it, and the radar were not switched off. The aircraft was scrambled, and whatever delay or whatever reason why they were allowed to go or not shot down. I mean, these are those technical details. But one question, Jacob, I asked you yesterday, I mean, what is the political mileage that you want to draw? If you want to pull down the image of Pakistan before the Western world or America,
no,
because the Prime Minister is going, no, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, you are wasting your time trying to project Pakistan as a terrorist to the Americans or to the Western world.
We are not seeing this story at all, Air Vice Marshal. We are not seeing this story at all from the narrow prism of India and Pakistan. This is a story that goes way beyond India and Pakistan. And we're certainly not looking at it. We're certainly not looking at it from the prism of Nawaz Sharif's visit next week to Washington. It's not that. I mean, we know that Kunduz is probably going to be a greater talking point between the American president and the Pakistani Prime Minister when they meet next week. That is not the intention at all. I think there are too many pieces of this puzzle that are falling into place, and I've been in this business of journalism maybe for far too long. Maybe that's why I'm cynical. I think too many pieces of this puzzle are falling. Here's my hypothesis, okay? Here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm putting out on air tonight. Maybe none of my panelists will back me on this, but the Osama bin Laden story, I wouldn't be surprised in some years, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, the Osama bin Laden story has parallels to the whole George Bush weapons of mass destruction story in Iraq.
No, I think that is carrying things.
I don't know.
I think that's carrying things rather too far. But the fact of the matter is there are things to be fitted in the puzzle. As you said, I can't imagine Pakistan's radar being that weak that they couldn't spot it. If they did, why didn't they take the helicopter on? No, I think really I come back to a very basic thing. I think it's not fair to say this is related to Nawaz's visit. I don't, knowing the Americans, they're not going to bother about what happens between India and Pakistan. This has been a pain in their neck for the last 7 decades. They're going to talk Kunduz in Afghanistan and the 6,000 troops they're going to leave behind.
General Malik.
Yeah, Zaka, you are talking about military operations and military history. And that is an important aspect because we have to learn lessons from military operations and military history. And they are very useful, lessons both for the military leaders as well as the political leaders if we want to avoid wars in the future or if we know how the war can take place. From that aspect, I think what you are doing is useful, very useful. I also want to add here that another civilian gentleman from Pakistan who has spoken about it, I think, is Haqqani.
Yeah.
He has also spoken about it, that the Pakistani president knew about it and Pakistani establishment knew about it, particularly the collaboration that took place between the SEAL operation conducted by the US and the Pakistani. Now, whether the radars were switched off or not, probably Abid Rao, he would know more. But also, we must take into account that Osama's house is 800 meters away from the academy, Pakistan Academy. I cannot imagine that while the operation was going on, there was absolutely no reaction on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's
most suspicious.
It's phenomenal. I mean,
this doesn't happen.
You have a Black Hawk which has gone down, which has exploded into flames. There's a huge plume of smoke and fire, and nobody in the town seemed to know. Air Vice Marshal, I mean, here's the larger point, and I think, General Malik was referring to Hussein Haqqani. Hussein Haqqani lost his job as Pakistan's ambassador to Washington because the army felt that he was the one who passed on that information to President Zardari. He didn't keep the army in the loop. And Wajid Shamsul Hassan said that in as many words on the record yesterday on our channel, that Hussein Haqqani lost his job because the generals were angry. The generals felt that he had cut the loop.
So historically, Jacob, you are absolutely right. Haqqani was on the wrong side of the establishment, to say the least. So whatever he has said, you know, after leaving the job or even during his tenure in Washington, it was not taken well by the establishment. Mr. Zardari was equally, you know, I will not say irresponsible, but was not as much in the decision making as a president should have been. So there was this missing link, or there was this gap between the actual situation. And there are these questions that were raised to the Aptabad Commission. The report still is confidential with the government.
Yeah.
They haven't yet made it public. And what I want to say is we need to move ahead in India-Pak, you know, relationship. These things are, you know, you can debate on them. And like, you know, in French they say that these are those chewing gum subjects that you debate for half an hour or you debate for 3 days. The result is the same.
Look,
so,
I mean, they said the same thing about what happened in My Lai in the Vietnam War. They said the same thing about the weapons of mass destruction theory that I was referring to. They said the same thing about Abu Ghraib. I mean, look, initially and Seymour Hersh said this when he put out his story last year. The first reaction was, oh, he's lost his mental balance. I mean, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then within a week, the reporters who covered the story said, oh, there's nothing new in it. We had it all along. So within a week, they went from lost your mental balance to we had the story. But I think G Parthasarthy had a question for you.
I think, Marshal, I would like to pose a query to you which has amused me and will amuse you. Osama bin Laden was there before he was killed for 12 years. He produced 4 babies, 3 wives, a family of 8 plus service staff, living 800 meters from the Kakul Academy. How can a man live in a cantonment like that with nobody knowing about it? Surely the corps commander would have known. The commander of the Kakul Academy would have known. How can one take the view we didn't know about it? You know, why I'm saying this is because again I go back to the records which your Air Force have maintained, say of 65, what Nur Khan has said, what you had to say about Kargil. Do you seriously believe that your army is so dumb as to allow this man to live in a cantonment?
Yeah, you can answer that question.
800
you can answer that
meters from the Kakul Academy without
if you have an answer, and then if you want
because
to ask
everything for me
you can
takes
do that
off
as well.
from that. I've been to Kakul myself when I was High Commissioner when I was invited once.
Sir, you're absolutely right. You know, these queries are genuine, and it doesn't. One doesn't, you know, accept that it is possible.
Yeah, just 1 second, General. Let him finish. Go ahead, Mr. Abid Rao.
You see, had it been before the Operation Zarbe started, I would have agreed 100% with you. But now things are very different. What I'm saying, I mean, I said yesterday also and today that, you know, we have gone much ahead of that to debate an issue like that. It is an embarrassing thing. It is definitely not a very good thing for Pakistan to have that, you know, the Air Force did not react, the Army did not react, as you said, that it's a cantonment.
Just give me a moment before I get General Malik back in. This is the first official statement from the Pakistan Foreign Office. It's a diplomatic statement. A question was asked in the press briefing today by a reporter, I think from Such News. What is your take on the statement of the former defense minister regarding Osama bin Laden? And this is the reply, the answer from the Pakistan Foreign Office spokesperson. I will not comment on the views of an individual expressed in his private capacity. I mean, as a journalist, I'm seeing this statement, I'm reading it out to you. The first thing that stands out for me is that they're not denying it. They're not saying that Mr. Mukhtar was wrong. They're not saying that he lied. They're not saying
he didn't make the mistake
that the tape was edited. Okay? So now go ahead, General Malik.
You know, I have a lot of respect for Abid Rao. within the Pakistani establishment, I think he was the first Air Force officer who raised the queries when Kargil war was being launched, if I have read correctly. Why doesn't he think that the knowledge of these operations is useful for future? Doesn't he believe that whatever was done during Kargil war has a lesson for future? So I think that knowing full details of such operation is important, and more important is who's responsible for it and how they manage to get away. Now, Pakistani's propensity for telling lies, particularly by General Pervez Musharraf, I mean, I can say that openly, is very well known. And they have been doing this kind of a thing right from the time when they got the missile technology from North Korea, when they got the nuclear technology from China, or when they had the A.Q. Khan episode of nuclear proliferation. And of course, as far as Kargil war is concerned, Partha has mentioned, and Abid Rao knows it probably much better than any other Pakistani because he himself was there. So I think it is important for us to analyze these events. It is important for us to discuss it in detail in public so that the public becomes aware of it, and then these mistakes do not occur. I remember Captain Littleheart, his statement, he said that the military history is full of mistakes and let us learn from it. Some words to that effect. So I think it is an important aspect for military people to learn from the military history.
Air Vice Marshal, I'll give you the closing comment in response to General Malik's question.
Sir, I have a lot of regard for you, and I mean, your comment is very accurate. The question is that there is a lesson for both the countries. I mean, what will prevent the next Kargil? I mean, I leave it to you. There's a very senior diplomat, Parthasarthy Sahab is sitting here. I have a lot of regard for him. And the lesson is for both the countries. And if you want to debate, then the objective and the aim should be very clear. If it is only cornering one side and, you know, trying to project Pakistan as a bad boy in the region, which unfortunately has been Indian policy at the Foreign Office level, at the media level, I really want to suggest that, you know, let's calm down on that. Let's lower the temperatures. Let's talk to each other. And whatever has happened in the last 1.5 years, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we have taken this terrorism bit very seriously. Zarb-e-Azb is one of them. And what has Indian government done in this last 1.5 years? Things are worse today than what they were on 26th May.
Again, I mean, at the cost of sounding repetitive, I want to say this, I said this last night as well, that we are all for peace between India and Pakistan, but I would urge our friends in Pakistan that this story goes far beyond the prism of just India-Pakistan ties. This is a global story. I want to thank all our guests, G Parthasarthy, Air Vice Marshal Abid Rao, and General Malik, for joining us tonight on our talking point. I think the story, the narrative of Osama bin Laden right now, even today, even after 4.5 years of his death, is still in a bit of a flux. It oscillates between fact and myth, and I think the last chapter in that story certainly has not been written. In fact, the process of writing history is not a single-day event. I think it's a continuous process, and with each step, the step that we took a couple of nights ago here on CNN-IBN was just adding one more layer, one more new information to this jigsaw puzzle, and hopefully through the course of time we will be able to unravel the full picture as to what happened to Osama bin Laden as well as what happened after his time. We're going to take a quick break here on the program. When we come back, we'll have all the other stories that have made the headlines this Thursday.